Okay, boys and girls, this is your Wednesday math. And I think for math today, it would help if we start with our mental math to remember some of the things we've already learned. So I want you to have your marker boards ready and your sock and your marker. And I'm going to give you a chance to answer the question, and then I'm going to share the answer. If you want to pause the video to give you more time to think about the answer before I share it, then you can pause the video and do that. So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to draw a circle on your marker board, okay? It could be a pretty big circle. That part should be pretty easy. Now what I want you to think about is I want you to divide your circle into two equal parts. This is fractions. This is what we are working on before we left for break. So two equal shares. Okay, so what you should have done was draw a line like that. If you did yours this way, that's okay too. It could even go at a diagonal, that's fine. But what we have to remember is that when we make it into two equal shares, that both parts should be the same size. Now obviously it's not gonna be perfect because I didn't draw a perfect circle, but just needed to make it close. Now what I want you to do is I want you to think about how would you name just one of these parts. If this was a pizza and I wanted this part, how would we name that? What would we call that? So pause the video. If I'm too quick for you, stop and think, what would we call that? We had several names we worked on the last time we did this together. Okay, I hope that you said half. Okay, I hope that you remember that one. Some of you might have remembered some other ways to name it, where we named it and we called it 1 out of 2, because it's 1 out of 2 parts. Some of you also might even remember that we even wrote it this way. We weren't real good at that part yet, but we were headed in that direction. We may even come up on lessons like that here in the future. But I wanted you to remember that we call that half, right? Okay, go ahead and erase. And then I want you to draw a rectangle on your board. Or you could just use the whole board since it is a rectangle. And then I want you to divide your rectangle into two equal parts or two equal shares. So for this one, you might have divided it a lot of different ways. So you could have divided it that way. Now to make this quicker and easier, I'm going to use my whole board. You could have divided it that way. And some of you may have even divided it that way, right? To make two equal shares. So now here is my question for this one, a little bit different than the last one. If we have that rectangle that we divided into two equal shares, okay, and I wanted to talk about both parts, stop and think for a minute, how would I name those? How would I name both parts? If this was a square pizza, which is one of my favorites, a deep dish pizza, how would I name that? If you said whole, you're right. It would be the whole thing. I could eat that a whole pizza. Or remember how we could name it 2 out of 2. Because there's 2 pieces and I'm talking about eating both. So 2 out of 2. And that one would look like that in fraction form. So the whole thing. Okay? Now, last one for review. You can go ahead and draw another rectangle or use the whole board if you'd like. And I want you to divide it into 4 equal parts. So remember, I'm kind of giving these answers pretty quick. You can pause the video to give you more time to think about them before I share my answers. But try to divide your board into 4 equal shares or 4 equal parts or pieces. I could use all of those words. They mean the same thing. Okay, so you may have divided it like this. And again, remember, it's not perfect. We're not measuring it, but we're trying to use our eyes as best we can to tell. But what I have here is 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. You might have drawn it a different way. And for those of you who may have forgotten, I kind of tried to teach you a trick the last time on how to get 4 parts. The best way is to try to first divide it in half. And then take one of those pieces and divide it in half. And then I'll divide this chunk at the top in half. And then I've got what's close to 4 equal parts. And then the last one, I bet somebody out there drew this one. You probably went at the diagonals, right? Okay, do you remember how to name 4 equal shares? While you're thinking about that, I'm just going to draw this one again. 4 equal shares. Okay, hopefully you remember that we named that a fourth. Takes the word 4 and just adds a TH on the end. That's easy. Or 1 out of 4. If I was just getting one of these pieces. Or like this. So that was just a little bit of our warm-up to not forget how we have talked about dividing things into pieces, because part of that is going to help us with our goal today. Our goal today is to understand how to tell time to the half hour. We've done time to the hour. So in that math packet, it's the one that had your shapes on the front from Monday that you probably have taken off and cut apart, I hope. So then the next page you would have found was a clock. So you're going to want to put the numbers on that clock, and you're going to want to cut out the hour hand and the minute hand. Now, I haven't tried this yet. I'm going to try it on the video right here with you, because I'm trying to figure out how we can get these hands to turn if you don't have a special, it's called a brad at home, which I don't think I've got anywhere. So I'm going to poke a hole in the center of the clock with the tip of my scissors. Please get an adult to help you do that. I don't want you to poke your fingers. I'm going to poke a hole in the middle of the X on my hour hand. And I'm going to poke a hole in the middle of the X on my minute hand. Okay, and I'm trying to find a way that will allow these to move. So here's what I thought of. I got one little square of toilet paper. I know that we probably don't all have a lot of toilet paper, so just one square if you have enough to spare. Then I'm just going to kind of twist it up, and I'm going to try and stick that through my hour hand carefully, because your hour hand, it's paper, it'll rip. Probably making my hole a little bit bigger as I'm pulling this through. That's okay. I'm not going to make it go too much further. And then I'm going to stick it through my minute hand. Okay, get those, they're touching there. And then I'm going to stick it through my hole on my clock. Okay, I've got quite a bit of toilet paper hanging off there. I'm going to tear that so it's not so much hanging off. And then my hope is that we're going to be able to move these hands. So let's check it out. Look, it worked. And I did that live for you. How about that? I am going to have to lay it down to get my hands to move. So we learned time to the hour. And so what you should know right now as I'm showing this to you is what time it says. Go ahead and think about it. Hope you said 3 o'clock. Because we learned that when the minute hand, remember that's the long one, when it's pointing to the 12, and then the hour hand, which is the short one, is pointing to one of these big numbers in the clock, we learned that that's always going to tell us that it's something o'clock. So right now it's 3 o'clock. Okay, let me lay mine down and adjust it to a different time to practice this real quick. Okay, what time is it there? This is the best I can do. I should have brought home my practice clocks, but I'm using what you've got. So this is showing, hope you said 5 o'clock. Let's do one more together, and then you can always practice this with a family member. There we go. What time am I showing you? 8 o'clock. And you could also have a family member say, hey, show me 10 o'clock. So I give you guys a second, show me 10 o'clock. And you go ahead and set your clock. And then you could hold it up and show a family member and say, look, there's 10 o'clock. Okay? All right, so that's our previous goal, is that we can tell time to the hour. Our goal today now is to tell time to the half hour. So do you remember when we were warming up and we drew the circle, right? And you drew a line like this, and what did we call that? We called that half, right? Well, that's important in knowing how to tell time to the half hour. Look at your clock right now. If you were going to draw that line on your clock, and you were going to draw your clock in half into 2 equal parts, where would you draw that line? Now, I know there are a lot of places that you can draw it, but for our purposes, what I want you to imagine, I'm going to grab my pencil here. Imagine drawing that line from the 12 to the 6. That's how we divide a clock in half. And knowing that is going to be important for telling time to the half hour. Now, if you look at where I did that, where I my line, where I pretended to draw that line, it's from the 12 to the 6. So, let me set my clock. I'm going to go back to 10 o'clock here, right here. Now, we know that the hands move clockwise. They go around, right? So, watch this and listen to this little rhyme. When the minute hand goes round and is pointing down, it's half past something. So right now, it's half past 10 or 10:30. So that's why we call it half past, or a half hour has passed, because the minute hand has moved halfway around the clock. So I'm going to try that again with a different one. I'm going to set my clock here, best I can, to 7 o'clock, okay? Now, the minute hand goes round and is pointing down. It's half past 7 o'clock, or 7:30. Now, on a real clock, as that minute hand is moving, that hour hand is also going to start moving slowly. So if it is really 7:30 on your clock, you know what that hour hand's going to do? It's going to be moving and it's going to be pointing halfway between the 7 and the 8, because it's half past. Half of the hour has passed. That means 30 minutes have passed, because in 1 hour we have 60 minutes. Half of that is 30. So I want you to practice that again. Maybe even rewatch my video if that doesn't make sense. Ask somebody at home if they can help you practice some more of those times using your clock. Hopefully the little toilet paper clock worked for you. And then in that packet where you got your clock, you'll find this page. And on this page, it's going to give you a chance to practice what that time looks like on the analog clock, which is what we were just using. And then I'm going to show you here what it would look like to match on a digital clock. So if it was 7:30, I'm going to draw that short hour hand. Okay, let me show you. 7:30, I drew that short hour hand. It's a little bit past the 7. I didn't want to draw it right at the 7. And then I drew my minute hand, my long one, pointing to the 6, because that's half past. It's gone halfway around the clock. And then to make it match here on my digital clock, remember that the time that goes here is the hour. The hour comes first. So I'm going to fill that in with 7. And then the time that comes next, remember, that's our minutes. And if our minute hand has gone from the 12 all the way to the 6, if it's gone halfway around the clock, that equals 30 minutes, because a whole hour is 60 and half of that is 30. So right there in that minute spot, that's what I would write, 30. So 7:30. So now I've made my analog clock match my digital clock. And so this is a page where you can use to practice that, and you can make up your own times, or you can ask a family member, older brother, or sister, or somebody to help you and try to fill out that page. And then you could even be setting them on this one to help you. So hopefully that makes sense and that works. I'm working on trying to find a good clock video that I like on YouTube. Maybe you have one that you have found before, but if I find one, I will post that and share it with you. And then the last thing for math on Wednesday is to do journal page 177 to just continue practicing different math concepts that we've worked on throughout the year. So here you're drawing a line to match the face with the three-dimensional shape on the right. On this one, it says, is the blue part of each circle a half? What are other names for the blue parts? This is what we just did on our marker boards. Here you're going to circle the tens digit. Remember when we did that song, we said ones, tens, and hundreds. And when we're looking at numbers, remember that when we want to name the place, that we go the opposite direction of how we read. We go ones, tens, and hundreds. It goes that way when you want to name the place value. Here you're going to want to count up the coins. Do you remember how much a dime is worth? Hope you said 10 cents. And I know you remember a penny is 1. So that's the first thing I would do is find out what amount this is on each side. And then I will be able to put my symbol in the middle. And then number 5, you're going to count up those base 10 blocks. You think you want to start with the cubes, the 1s? Or do you think you want to start with the longs, the 10s? I hope you said cubes. Why would I want to start counting the cubes first? Do you think about that? If I counted the cubes first, think about what would happen if you had 10 cubes or more. Could you keep it that way? Oh, you'd have to regroup, wouldn't you? Or trade or exchange, because you can't have 10 in the 1s place. That's why you want to start counting with those cubes first. If you end up with more than 10, you're going to have to cross those out and exchange them for a long. So remember that on number 5. And then on number 6, to determine if these sentences are true or false. Remember true or false? True means it's right, it's correct, thumbs up. False means it's wrong, it's incorrect, it's not true. So what I would do is I would go through and solve each of these. I would say, oh, 4 plus 1, that's 5. 10 minus 5, that's 5. So that now says 5 equals 5. That's true. So you can put a T there for true. So do that page. And remember that anytime that you're doing your work and you have something that you have completed and you'd like to show it to me, I love seeing your work. Some people have sent me pictures. I love to see videos. That's the only way I get to interact with you guys since I can't be there with you at school. So I would love to see your work. And if you have questions, please let me know. All right. So our goal today was telling time to the half hour. So I hope that makes sense and I hope you keep practicing it.